And we are back. This is Asko Soukka, who will be talking today about Plone and Volto in a Jamstack project, and I'm very interested to hear what it's all about. I did want to say that Asko has been a long-time contributor to Plone, a very important contributor to Plone. He's, among many things, he's the creator of Mosaic. And I had to ask permission from him to say it because even though it is a somewhat old and classic tool for Plone Classic, it's been something fantastic for Plone users around the world. And of course, Asko doesn't stop, he doesn't rest. He's done amazing things, including the Gatsby integration with Plone. And every time I hear one of his talks, I'm amazed at, first of all, how brilliant he is, and also, of course, how quickly he speaks. So with that, here's Asko.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kim, and hello, everyone. I'll try to speak a little bit slower than usually. So one more talk about Plone and Volto today, before lighting those, of course. And this one is using Plone and Volto as a CMS to manage content to be actually published outside the Plone with so-called Jamstacks. In this time, technically with GatsbyJS. So in photos, here we are editing content in Volto with Plone Backend, and as much out of the box as possible. So it looks like Volto with the Plone logo because our editors knew Plone but didn't know Volto. So now it felt more familiar with the Plone logo. And then the end results will be published with GatsbyJS, Jamstack, and we can see that we recognize the content in Volto and the same content in that GatsbyJS site, but everything else outside the main content is different. For example, here we can see there are actually tabs, 4 tabs in this page, and each tab contains a different page from the Volto CMS. And yes, my name is Asko Soukka. I'm working for University of Jyväskylä. It's a university in central Finland. I'm working in internal digital service department there. So we develop services for our real study and teaching and research departments. And I've done Plone for so long time that I have done, I guess, every possible integration for Plone I can think of. And also from that point of view, it's been a refreshing experience to just use Plone as a product and then use that end results well-managed CMS content outside Plone in other projects. Okay, so our story begins, probably it began decades ago, but this story began a few years ago when our university and a few other universities in Finland were planning to start using a common student information management system. So they wanted to build one system. They could all use the formed company to build the system, and so share resources. No more everyone should develop their own system. Let's use the same system. But of course, having one generic system is not enough. But everyone also wants to have their branded side kicks from that project. So also our university wanted to have a branded study guide made from that information managed in that study and course information management system that was bought as a product and made by the company built by those universities. And part of the deal was that we were not able to use the APIs, live APIs from that system. We actually had to synchronize all the data from the original system and then host our own API to actually build the study guide. And the data was so complex that it looks like we were not able to easily have the user experience we wanted to have against the live API. And because we already had some experience from GatsbyJS, we wanted to try out if we dump all the data into PostgreSQL with JSON B columns data as it is, and then we on top of that data we'll build nice database views to show the data in the way we want to see it. And then on top of that, we set up Azure GraphQL API that can show that Postgres SQL data as a GraphQL API. And now GatsbyJS can eat that GraphQL API and help us to get all the data we want and make that branch study guide for us. But of course, only showing the data from the original system was not enough. So some of parts of our university, namely part we called Open University, that can sell courses outside our main students. So they wanted to have more marketing-like material next to the study information. So they need a real CMS that can have that they can use to maintain rich content with hyperlinks and images, all the usual stuff, and then manage that content in hierarchical way that they can share permissions accordingly to their stuff. And of course, the original system was not capable of that, but we need to have real CMS to do that. And of course, we knew that Plone is the real CMS that can handle all this out of the box. So with Plone, we could have all the CMS requirements filled by that Open University department. Yeah, so we ended up building that with Plone. So we gave them Plone well beforehand. They were able to start making their content well before we had integrations there. And we wanted to have their fresh user experience. So we had to use Volto. Also, at the end, it was easier to reproduce the Volto layouts outside than what, for example, Mosaic layout would have been. And at the top, the final product was made with GatsbyJS. And I'm sorry that our site is only in Finnish, all that marketing materials, but you can get that link from the slides later. You can go and click around the site and try to figure out which information is come from the relational database system, the student information system, and which information is managed in Volto in the CMS. And currently it contains about 6,000 HTML pages in 2 different languages. So it's total 12,000 pages. And of those pages, they contain CMS content from around little less than 800 Volto pages. So I think 800 pages is already as much pages at Plone really makes sense to manage those pages and manage user permissions for those pages. And well, okay, so now we had all that. They were able to, from the very beginning, they were able to do those pages in the Plone. But how would we connect those pages in Plone to the data from the student information system? And again, Plone out of the box gave us a solution. So Plone supports, you can extend Plone content types with no code through the browser. So we decided to use the basic Plone page document content types, and we added a few extra fields from that directly to the browser. So few fields that with certain information, they could be connected later to the information from the student information system. And at Volto side, it looks pretty much the same. But of course, how do the editors know the right data that they should be filling to those fields? So some of the fields we could use just fixed vocabulary. We could already enter the vocabulary fixed through this Dexter's editor. But then the main field that actually connected the data to the exact things from the student information system, we needed to implement our own like dynamic, something like Plone Vocabularie, but actually we did that all in Volto. So we took the Volto multi-select component, React component, and customized that for that single field to actually make real-time lookups against our API. So we only actually, all that was implemented in the single React module, React component. That was the easiest way to do it. So simply using the Plone basic feature, adding a few extra fields. And then on the Volto side, we added our custom widget to allow our users, the editors, to make those connections. They were able to do that. And then at Gatsby side, it looks like this. So with GatsbyJS, you query for the data you want to display with GraphQL. So here we are on some template for some of those content from the student information system, we want to show the related Plone documents on that page. So we do query for Plone documents that contain that same ID that related to that information we are going to show. And then we see there's .volto document that it's real GraphQL shortcut, GraphQL fragment. So we have already some elsewhere defined what are all the data we need to get from one Plone Volto document. So since when we are using this in many different templates, we already need to have this fragment shortcut here. And then we get all the data. We need all the Plone documents we want to show on that single page. And finally, on the Volto ReactJS layer, from Volto layer, of course, we might have only single React component. Here it's Volto document. We feed that data to that Volto document component, and then on our page we'll have that Volto document nicely drawn. So of course there is more magic in the actual component that can knows how to read the Volto blocks layout, and then knows how to render the individual blocks. But from the casual Volto developer, we can all hide these behind these simple components. So at the end, this is what the authors see, and through all these steps, we get the end results. Now a few words about GatsbyJS, why we choose to do this with GatsbyJS. So, and what is GatsbyJS? It's been mentioned a few times already today. So GatsbyJS is a ReactJS-based site generator. So it takes information and your layout. So how they got it with JavaScript, you call APIs, and then you have some markup here. You have JSX, ReactJS markup, and then it outputs a directory of files, HTML files, JavaScript files, and JSON files. And you can deploy these files on the server, and it runs your site then without backend. So caching and caching is easy, and your site is very fast. And Gatsby, what it makes special for the other options is that it has a nice framework for supporting multiple different sources. So you can collect data from different sources, and it abstracts all those data behind GraphQL language. So for example, we have our student information system and then Plone CMS. But when you're doing the site, you collect both of those data with the same GraphQL language. It's a nice layer. And it's easy to get started, and they have very nice developer experience, developer documentation. And if you are a fan of TypeScript, nowadays it works really nicely with TypeScript. That when it can generate TypeScript and GraphQL ecosystem can generate those types for your queries, so that IDEs can autocomplete you all the data you are using. So it's really nice to update the pages, because your IDE can then already autocomplete you what kind of fields you have under this kind of object. And of course, maybe the decisive reason why we choose GatsbyJS that we knew that GatsbyJS has very nice Plone support, because I was personally mentoring two Google Summer of Codes projects for it. So it works out of the box for Plone default types. It also supports Plone files and images for the default types, or if they are with the default names. It still doesn't support if you have weird custom types with files and images with custom names, then we need to figure out some kind of configuration for that. And also it has support for rich text, and now it also has support for Volto blocks, so that you can use those data in Gatsby pages. And it tries to help you to solve all the related links and related images in your site. So it helps figuring out if you have one document page, it tries to get you all the related pages that are linked to that page, so that you can also use them with the page. And also it supports incremental updates, meaning that when you run multiple builds against the Plone site, it only refetches the new information. So with only Plone sites, GatsbyJS is really fast to use with gatsby-source-plone. And easy to configure. the minimal configuration only needs the source plugin and file system plugin, and then the base URL where you are going to fetch the information. And the base URL together with Plone really is the magic using GatsbyJS with Plone, because one Plone site can host as many folders for as many GatsbyJS sites you want. You only use different base URL, and GatsbyJS will then only see the pages below that URL, below that folder. So you can turn one CMS, Plone CMS into one Plone instance into CMS for many Gatsby sites. That makes it, I think that's makes it different from different CMSs with GatsbyJS. And also has some advanced configuration. And for example, we are using our because we don't publish, we want our Plone site to be private, where we host this information. We keep all the content private, and then we need to feed Plone REST API token for the integration to be able to fetch the private content. And this is how GatsbyJS looks like with Plone integration actually with our site. So we have our student information system fields here, and then we have all fields starting with Plone are Plone content types. And in the example query in the center, we are searching some Plone folder, and then we can recursively get the children of that folder, And there are many ways to do queries and build hierarchies, but this is maybe the most simplest and fun way if you have a very simple GatsbyJS site from Plone. But of course, not everything is easy. So when using GatsbyJS with Plone, it requires some experience to figure out how to query connected pages with Plone. For example, with Volto pages, we have Volto block with rich text with links and or Volto images. We have now also information from REST API and we can have all the information in that GraphQL browser with GatsbyJS. How we still really use those together, so that we can, because we don't want to show the Volto rich text blocks as such, but we want to really use GatsbyJS optimized images instead of just normal image stacks, and we need to have all those images also served from the same GatsbyJS build folder. Also, we want all these links to be links using that router that GatsbyJS uses. So making all those transformations and make them work correctly, that's a little bit complex, it needs practice. And there are one example of how to do that with the Gatsby Starter in Gatsby Starter Plone project. And also in here, I wanted to try, is it possible to actually use Plone Volto project, that npm package as a dependency? And we succeeded in that. And we are, I think half of the blocks are rendered directly using the React components directly from Plone Volto. And half of them mostly with links and images. We have taken the original blocks, and then we have customized them to use GatsbyJS images and GatsbyJS links. So it's possible, but links and images need to be re-implemented to be able to use these GatsbyJS flavors. And because Plone Volto is not meant to use as a dependency right now, you need to know you need to do some Webpack overrides to really make it work as an importable dependency. And none of those are, it's not impossible to make Plone Volto work as dependency if there's really need for that. So, and more than my used. So it would be, I believe it would be able to make it work, but then again, I'm not sure how much sense it makes. Because you really only need the React component to render those blocks. So you need like 5 ReactJS files from the whole Volto project. So it might be simpler to just render those 5 files and learn to use GraphJS directly to get the same end results. And finally, the worst part of GatsbyJS, or where we did not really succeed, was that we file to make the build fast. So, well, 12,000 pages is not that much pages for GatsbyJS, but it's a lot because that most of our data come from that student from the system, or actually the PostgreSQL server copy of that through complex database views. That's not all of those are fast. So mostly those are that takes time, and the GatsbyJS plugin, GraphQL plugin, has no cache for its data. So even Plone plugin can cache everything from our Plone side. We still need to wait an hour for the GraphQL plugin to refetch everything. And personally, for me, it's been hard to follow how GatsbyJS develops because they have all the core product and all the add-ons in the same monorepo at GitHub with the same issue tracker. So, and that makes, at least for me, hard to figure out what's really the state of a single plugin inside that repository. But that's about it from me for now. So now we should have some time for questions, I believe. And then when there are no more questions, maybe Widgets. Kim, please.
Thanks, Asko. Just checking to see if we do have any questions. I don't see any in the Slido, but I do have one for you. Looking at your last point about how the GraphQL plugin is slow and has no cache, is there a way to build some kind of intermediate layer to cache those things, even though it itself won't support it directly?
I believe we should be able to put the wrapper on top of that plugin. So build our own plugin that wraps that plugin, and that plugin could do the caching. But because the plugin was missing cache from the beginning, we kind of forget to take that in account. So we should rethink the whole thing as how we fetch content to also figure out how we actually know that the data has been changed. Because of course the plugin cannot magically know that we do have new data on our database. So we need to figure out how we knew that the data is, which data is new. And we forgot to take that in account. So now it's a bit late. So right now it's easier for us to say to our editors that you have the full day time for editing, and then during nighttime we make a new build. And they are happy with that. They know that they have all because Volto is still missing that checkouts, it's working copies, yes. So it actually works better now for them that they know they have full day's time to edit things, and then only nighttime we do the rebuild.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Just checking again if there are any other questions. Yes, there's a question. Oh, I guess it's a comment. Plone provides the GraphQL or REST API. I'm not sure if that's a question or a statement.
Yeah, so Plone provides REST API, and our GatsbyJS source plugin uses that REST API to bring the data to GatsbyJS, and then GatsbyJS makes a local GraphQL API for the Plone data. And after using both GatsbyJS GraphQL API and then Hasura GraphQL API, I will learn that I should not implement my own GraphQL API. It's hard to make a good GraphQL API.
Thank you. We have another question, which is how are web vitals of the Gatsby site? Have you seen any issues on the SEO side?
We did add a lot of SEO stuff into those pages, so I think it should be pretty good right now. Of course, because the whole site was new, so it took time for search engines to find it and index it properly. But of course, none of GatsbyJS don't magically add all this search engine metadata for you. So of course, it does create a static build, and the search engine can see all the data there, but you need to add all those metadata tags by yourself. That Plone has you by default.
Right. And we have another question, which is any news or experience on Gatsby incremental builds?
No, the Gatsby company decided to only offer the incremental builds through their cloud service. And what I know from Webpack, I know it's possible to make Webpack to like write all changes to the file system right away. So I guess it should be, I think it should be possible to write incremental builds by having a constantly running GatsbyJS server with special Webpack configuration that outputs the final files. But I haven't had time to look that into detail. And also it would have failed for us because every change would require 1 hour of GraphQL prefetch.
And we have another question. Do you have any plans to support TypeScript?
Well, GatsbyJS supports TypeScript, and well, our plugin is not written in TypeScript yet, but actually that's not necessary, because if you have a GatsbyJS setup with TypeScript, it's only the TypeScript plugin creates type in Fly for your GraphQL searches. So we can use TypeScript auto-completion in our project, even gatsby-source-plone is not written in TypeScript.
Okay, thank you. Looks like those are the questions we have, but I would encourage everyone who's watching to please join Asko in the face-to-face Jitsi meeting, which is below the video you're watching now in the Loudswarm. It's the blue button for joining the face-to-face meeting. And again, I want to thank Asko for, again, expanding my brain and introducing us and introducing me in the Plone community to yet more technological innovation from Finland. Thank you, Asko.
Thank you. See you soon.